The city of Verona, with its narrow alleyways and sprawling piazzas, had always been a place where love stories seemed to unfold. But for Clara Romano, a struggling violinist, it was a city of fleeting dreams. Her days were spent playing on street corners, her music a quiet plea to anyone who cared to listen. One evening, as rain poured down in silvery sheets, Clara stood beneath an awning in Piazza dell'Erbi, her violin case at her feet. The crowd had dispersed, seeking shelter, and she was left alone with the patter of rain and the flickering glow of streetlights. She played anyway, her bow gliding across the strings, her heart pouring into a melody as melancholic as the weather. "Beautiful," a voice said, startling her. Clara turned to see a man standing nearby, his umbrella tilted to shield him from the rain. He was tall, with dark curls that clung to his forehead and eyes that seemed to hold an entire symphony of emotions. In his hand, he held a notebook, its pages damp around the edges. "Thank you," she said, her voice wary but polite. "Do you play here often?" he asked, stepping closer. "Only when it rains," Clara replied, a small smile tugging at her lips. "The sound carries better." The man nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "Rain has a way of amplifying things." "I'm Alessandro, by the way." "Clara," she said, shaking his offered hand. Over the next weeks, Clara and Alessandro began to cross paths often. He was a writer, he explained, working on a novel inspired by the city's timeless charm. Clara's music had sparked something in him, a scene he couldn't get out of his mind. "You play like you're telling a story," he said one evening as they shared coffee in a small cafe. "What is it you're trying to say?" Clara hesitated, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "I suppose I'm trying to say what words can't. Music feels safer than speaking sometimes." Alessandro's expression softened. "Then let me help you find the words." Their connection deepened as Alessandro began weaving Clara's melodies into his writing. He attended her street performances, his notebook always in hand, capturing the way her music seemed to transform the piazzas into stages of raw emotion. Clara, in turn, found inspiration in his descriptions of the city, her compositions growing more intricate and poignant. But as their bond flourished, so did the challenges. Alessandro's family, prominent publishers with high expectations, viewed Clara's humble lifestyle as a liability. They urged him to focus on his career and avoid distractions. "You can't let them dictate your life," Clara said one night, her voice breaking with frustration. "You have to decide what matters to you." Alessandro reached for her hand, his grip firm. "You matter. Don't ever doubt that." The rain returned with a vengeance on the night of Clara's most important performance. She had been invited to play at a small gallery, an opportunity that could elevate her career. But as she stood backstage, her confidence wavered. The weight of her fears of failing, of not being enough, pressed down on her. "What if they don't like it?" she whispered to Alessandro, who had come to support her. He cupped her face, his eyes steady. "They will. And even if they don't, I'll still be here. Your music isn't for them, it's for you." Clara nodded, his words anchoring her. When she stepped onto the stage, the applause felt distant, her focus entirely on the violin in her hands. She closed her eyes and played, the melody rising and falling like the rain outside. Each note carried a piece of her heart, her fears dissolving with every stroke of the bow. The audience erupted into applause as the final note hung in the air. Clara opened her eyes to see Alessandro standing at the back, his smile brighter than the gallery's lights. Later, as they walked through the rain-soaked streets, he pulled her close. "You were brilliant," he said. "I couldn't have done it without you," Clara replied, her voice trembling with gratitude. In the months that followed, Alessandro's novel, inspired by Clara's music, became a bestseller. Clara's performances drew larger audiences, her name whispered with admiration in Verona's artistic circles. Together, they navigated the challenges of their worlds, their love a duet that neither could have composed alone. And on rainy evenings, when the streets emptied and the city seemed to belong only to them, Clara would play her violin, and Alessandro would write, their dreams and melodies entwined beneath the Verona sky.